One way to tell the year is coming to a close is the trees. Come December, the beautiful color is gone, replaced by dormant limbs waiting for the calendar to reset and spring to come.
Besides their shade and picturesque fall appearance, many of us take for granted Iowa's most abundant resident. Truth is, trees add a great deal to our lives. Everything from improving our mental health to increasing our property values.
In 2015, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources worked with communities across the state to diagnose the health and population of our publicly cared for trees, revealing a surprising amount about Iowa's woodland population.
I think that folks in Iowa do not have a full appreciation of the benefits that trees bring us. You know, this is a farm state, and before that it was a prairie state. And I think while we may not have an appreciation of trees in general, everybody has a connection to a tree that they grew up with, a tree that they climbed, a tree that they had their first kiss under, whatever that may be.
Of all 50 states, Iowa has the most altered landscape in the nation. Before pioneers crossed the Mississippi, the Iowa countryside was dominated by wild prairie grass and intermittent woodland and wetland areas. Now, after centuries of progress, our state is painted with thousands of acres of farmland, roads, buildings, and communities. And while less than 1% of our state's prairie grass remains, Iowans have made a concerted effort to reforest our public spaces with a plethora of trees.
The value in community trees is enormous. There are economic, social, and environmental impacts from urban trees, and usually we think about the environmental impacts, the stormwater runoff reduction, for instance, or the small particulate removal for air quality. But there's so much more than that. We also have things like the health of the community. We see a lot of research about how having a larger tree canopy increases the health. We have reduced risk of stroke, of heart attacks when we have larger tree canopy, lower levels of obesity, lower levels of asthma, lower symptoms of ADHD, and the list goes on and on and on.
Recognizing the value urban trees bring, 10 Iowa communities, along with the DNR, set out in 2015 on an ambitious 3-year plan to take stock of their publicly maintained trees and fully diagnose the health of their civic wooded areas.
This is a grant that I wrote for Forest Service funds to provide training and assistance to communities across Iowa. So we're teaching tree identification, forest health, signs and symptoms of various pests and diseases, hazard tree assessment, how to collect data on a GPS data collector, and we'll really have a plan moving forward for how many trees they need to remove, treat, plant, maintain in a year.
We start with some basic tree ID. Of course, the question, why is it important? The core of figuring out what you do with whatever it is, bug or whatever it is you have, starts with tree ID.
As the leaves of spring begin to bud, district foresters, such as Charles City's Jason Walker, start the tree inventory process. But before participants can start taking stock of the trees in their community, they must learn how to decipher a spruce from a cedar, an oak from an ash, and so on for the dozens of species of trees in Iowa.
Many of the quick things, of course, the obvious things that you see when you walk up to the trees, if it's the summertime, the leaves, are very, important characteristics that many people find the easiest to help identify trees. After you've done it for a while, you tend to look at the bark or maybe the general overall shape or structure of the tree, which is going to be a good indication of many of the different species we have.
All 10 participating communities start with a day jam-packed with identification material. Considering the amount of information to learn and the short period allotted, it quickly becomes apparent this course is but a short look into a much larger world of knowledge.
I think the key is, in the short time that we have them, we're not going to make them tree experts. They're not going to be able to go out in the park and everywhere and identify every tree. We want them to feel comfortable with the material we give them.
While overloaded, these courses are designed to build a foundation of tree identification and maintenance requirements. And as the year progresses, forester guidance will help push participants from being novices to competent tree identifiers.
We give them a lot of reference material, key books that are going to help them be able to correctly identify species. So if we meet multiple times, each time we meet, hopefully we'll learn new species, learn specific characteristics, and they'll just become more comfortable trying to identify trees.
Okay. All right, this one.
As spring progresses, communities leave the classroom and start applying their knowledge outdoors.
Sometimes you're going to walk up to a tree and you're going to know just what it is right off the bat. But if you're not at that point, what you're trying to do is take it from all these trees down to this little group, and then maybe figure out what it is out of that little group.
In Muscatine, as with all inventory efforts, tree ID starts with the basics. First, if a tree is conifer or deciduous. Second, finding the bud, where leaves sprout from a branch. Third, identifying alternate, opposite, or whorled leaf arrangement. And finally, investigating the leaves, fruit, thorns, and overall form of the tree.
See how this has a branch coming off here, branch here, on opposite sides of the main branch? The other form is alternate, remember, so it's whether they branch together coming off of the main stem or individually. And that goes for not only how the twigs are arranged on the branch, but also leaves are arranged on the twigs.
Throughout Iowa, April and May allow participants to test out their tree ID skills, but the actual public inventory process waits for the summer. To best make use of the spring, communities transition to planting. As part of the forestry grant, each community received an allotment of fresh saplings, and before the inventory courses began, their placement was decided. In Muscatine, it was the community soccer fields. In Fairfield, a local park. While only a handful will be planted, these trees represent a first step in a statewide pledge to urban woodlands.
So part of the commitment the communities have made when they applied for this is that they will change their code to include trees on their streets, for instance, to increase ways to plant trees for citizens, and to set goals and actively plan to increase our urban tree canopy.
In Pleasant Hill, Parks and Recreation Supervisor Heath Ellis personally saw the value in trees. But before his city could take part in the inventory process, city officials needed to be invested as well.
I've loved working with trees all my life, but when you bring it into an urban setting, it's a whole different ballgame. Every community struggles with that. They struggle with creating a budget, and they struggle with having a management plan. And you can't do that until you get elected people in your city management to really have a greater understanding of how urban trees can benefit the community.
When we see tree-lined downtowns, people tend to drive farther to shop there, they spend longer, and they spend more money. But we also see a lot of social impacts in terms of people having place attachment to their community, people spending more time talking to neighbors, and reduction in crime rates just by having a nice canopy of trees in your downtown area.
As spring turns to summer, leaves come to full bloom, allowing the inventory process to take off. Using tools both traditional and digitally enhanced, participants start cataloging every public tree.
So we're using a data collection unit. We're collecting size, what condition it's in, if any treatment should happen, such as pruning, and that's all saved to its location. So later on, the community can go to that on the map and find out more about their trees.
While constructing the inventory is a long, repetitive task, it will ultimately help build a 6-year tree management plan for each community. That plan will better help communities understand their overall species composition, as well as fully grasp hazard and pest control needs. And with invasive species becoming a serious concern, that information will be extremely valuable.
We're preparing for emerald ash borer, so we really want to know how many ash do we have so that we can plan for that. But in addition, that's also going to tell us what we should plant next, because we want to make sure that we're planting a lot of different species so we don't have a huge impact like emerald ash borer will have on the community.
Most communities have about 17% ash, so we need a real plan for how to handle that. And without knowing where the ash are and what the whole composition of the urban forest is, it's hard to make a plan. So if we know that we're going to lose up to 17% of our tree canopy across the state because of emerald ash borer, we're going to really have to work hard just to maintain that canopy. So it's really not a 5-year goal, it's more like a decades-long goal.
With threats such as the emerald ash borer looming, the inventory continues. And in Pleasant Hill, the feel of cataloging wasn't one of concern, but excitement, as the crew discovered a state record-breaking red oak.
So this will be the largest one in the state then?
This is the largest one in the state.
My Lord.
Yeah, largest one registered in the state. Probably one of my favorite parts was the counting and working with the GIS systems. And you kind of find out, wow, I got a lot of maples, or we got an abundance of a certain species. So that really helped. So you kind of had some enthusiasm and excitement, saying, "Hey, yeah, we know what we need to diversify in." So I really looked forward to knowing more information on the tree inventory as we move forward.
As summer fades, the tree inventory process comes to a close, and all that remains in the year-long course is pruning. While generally held until the late fall or winter, DNR foresters push pruning up so the last session can be completed before weather gets in the way of the project's objectives.
I think a lot of times folks think you just plant a tree, you walk away, and in 50 years you're going to have this big, beautiful tree. But I think when you start to teach them and talk to them about it, they go, wow, I mean, this is going to take some work, some planning, funding. When you start putting a dollar amount to it, they start going, wow, really realizing how important they are and what a big impact they have on our daily lives, too.
This year we have 10 communities we work with, and next year we'll have another 10. And we see the impact as actively managing our urban forests and actually increasing tree canopy. Then we can start getting businesses, corporations, civic groups, community members involved because they see all the benefits.